We are absolutely honored to have you here, and we have a very special guest joining us right now, the great Michael Baldwin. How are you, sir?
Thank you.
All right, great. Well, we are very happy to have you guys here. For those of you that make the rounds at the conventions, you know that we don't always get to see Don Coscarelli hardly at any of these shows, but even more rare, we never see Michael Baldwin, who is down in Austin. So we're very happy to have you guys here. How's this been for you this weekend?
Oh, just absolutely terrific. Texas Frightmare fans are like no other. It's been a great time, a lot of great questions, and
Take it over, Baldwin.
At last I have the power. When you have the microphone, you truly have the power.
It's been a great weekend. We've had a really fun time, and all is well.
Excellent. Well, we're going to open this up to questions because this is I guess this is the Sunday shortened version, and we only have so much time before the next panel comes in. So who's got a really, really good one to open this up? There we go.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
Do you still have nightmares about Angus going, boy?
You know, it's funny, people ask me that question from time to time, and this weekend people often have the idea that you must have nightmares about this kind of thing, and the answer is no. Never had one nightmare about Angus Scrimm, and the reason is that the process of filmmaking is nothing like watching the movie. They're two completely different things. You know, making a movie is very slow. It takes a long time to do everything. There's a gigantic bunch of people around, and there's setting, the whole, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, then there's a whole lot of work to make it scary, but it's really not that way on the day, right?
well, I still have nightmares about Angus.
Take it all back.
Because the first movie I ever made was this drama that kind of never went anywhere, but Angus played this wonderful character, did a terrific job. I think we started the movie, I was 19 years old, and Angus was the first adult actor, a classically trained actor that I'd ever worked with. And so the problem was being young and unorganized and undisciplined, we were always behind schedule. And so Angus would come down to our set where we'd shoot in this little crummy apartment. We'd put him in the back room, and we would start shooting. We'd get him down there like at 8 o'clock, and usually about 5 or 6 in the evening, we'd realize we were not going to get to Angus. And it was my job to walk down the hall to Angus, and that was the first time I ever saw the tall man, because I would open the door, I said, excuse me, we're not going to get to you today. And he would drop his chin, his eyeball would go up. What? And that was the tall man, and I was terrified. And I realized at that time that he would be fantastic in a horror movie or a pirate film. And I couldn't get the budget for the pirate, so I put him in a horror movie.
Well, and he has so many fond memories from that, and he shared it with us yesterday during the panel. And one of the things that keeps coming up is, will there be another Phantasm? And he says, ask you.
Well, it puts the pressure on me, and as he always said, it's never over. You know, the actors are all in fantastic shape and still look great, and we didn't conclusively end the film. I thought we conclusively ended it in Phantasm 4, but people tell me we didn't. So we're always talking about putting something together, and really hope to get something going, if possible. So stay tuned to phantasm.com, and hopefully in the next few months we might have something good to talk about. That's as far as I'll go with that one.
Well, that sounds promising, right? Okay, and right here in the front row.
How'd you end up meeting Joe Lansdale and working with him?
For those in the back, the question is, how did you end up meeting Joe Lansdale?
Yes, it was a sunny day in the San Fernando Valley, California, and I was walking down Ventura Boulevard into this old a bookshop called Dangerous Visions, which is since defunct, but it was a really cool shop. And there was a guy behind the counter, and I went up to him and I said, so what's new, what's cutting edge, what's cool in horror? And he says, well, come back here. And he took me to the Joe Lansdale section. And there was 3 or 4 books, because this was back in like 1990, way back. And he said, Joe Lansdale always has a high body count. I said, oh, well, that's pretty good. So I picked out 2 of the books and took them home and read them, and I saw that, or I understood that Joe had this really strange, bizarre, brilliant, peculiar East Texas sensibility, and could see that he wrote in a very cinematic style and that his work could be easily translated into movies. And so back then I determined that I would be the first one to bring Joe Lansdale to the big screen, and I tried to get one of his books, The Drive-In, set up, and failed miserably. And then a few years later, I read another one of his books, which I loved, called Dead in the West, which was, there hadn't really been many, horror westerns at that point, and I thought that would be cool. And nobody went for that. In fact, that was in a really bad time. A lot of you are too young to remember, but there was a period where horror fell out of favor in Hollywood in the pre-Scream days. And truthfully, I sent the script out a few times, and people said, oh, this is just a zombie movie. Who would ever want to see a zombie movie? We don't make those kind of things. And to the next submission, I actually went through with my word processor, and I changed every Z word to a creature word. It still didn't work, and that one didn't happen. But ultimately, about 10 years passed, and I got Bubba Hotep put together. And then I was fortunate enough during the Masters of Horror to be able to turn one of his short stories in. And it just shocks me to this day that no other filmmakers major filmmakers haven't grabbed onto his work, because he's brilliant.
All right, great. Right here in the front row.
When you were approached to do Masters of Horror, did you know immediately that you wanted to do that story, and was it hard to work under the time constraint?
The question was about if he knew he wanted to work on that particular Masters of Horror and the time constraint.
Yeah, it worked beautifully, because what I had done is concurrently, since I'd had such failure with the Drive-In and Dead in the West, I got Joe to give me the rights to both Bubba Hotep and Incident, and I thought I would go out with both of them and try to see which one I could get some interest in. And I was able to get Bubba going first. And the Incident short story is Bubba Hotep is a very extensive 40-page novella with a lot of depth to it. Incident is a very short story, and I thought that it would really work well in the shorter, 50-some minute time frame. So that was the perfect fit. And in terms of working with the short time schedule, yeah, it was a challenge, because with my co-writer Stephen Romano, who had adapted it, I have to be honest, there was some pressure on when I got involved. There wasn't at the beginning. It was like, yeah, let's get with everybody else and we'll make these things. But then, I was up there working, and in the same hotel, John Landis was coming through, and Dario Argento was actually shooting his episode, and I was hearing these stories about massive bloodletting in Dario's episode, and there was a lot of self-imposed pressure to try to make something good. So we were a little ambitious in terms of action in there. And so it was just a sprint to get it done. We had, I think, 9 days to shoot the thing, and it was like a real full-on movie.
Now with both of you, I know everyone has a favorite memory from the set, from when you work on any film, something that maybe 20 years from now, someone will say, what do you remember about Phantasm 2 or Phantasm 3 or something like that? Is there, I know there's a lot to choose from, but is there something that you always think about that's a fond memory from one of these films?
Phantasm was such a kind of a big part of my childhood that it's like asking, well, is there a part of your childhood that you really like? It's a little hard to kind of pick one thing. I got to do the things in Phantasm as a 13-year-old that kids don't really get to do. So shoot guns, drive muscle cars, drink beer. It was pretty fun. It was a goddamn good summer. It was a good time. Otherwise, Phantasm Oblivion is special to me just because I produced that movie with Don, and so I'm very involved in the making of the feature, and so that I've rarely had a more challenging task than to star in a movie and also produce it at the same time. So I'm proud of that work. I think we did a good job, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I'm very proud of Michael's participation in that film also, because in some respects, I was really worried that on Phantasm 1 that we had totally corrupted and ruined his life. And then here we were a couple decades later, and he was actually side by side with me as producing and taking care of the business that needs to get done, and also pulling off a really interesting aspect. Obviously with Phantasm, it's really hard to put your finger on any one moment, because the movie was just probably the most wonderful experience in my life professionally, and especially the fact that I was able to share it with what became lifelong friends. I still hang out with Michael and Angus, and Reggie is a pal. Kathy Lester, who now goes under Cat Lester, you all should check her out on the web, is still pursuing a music career. Bill Thornberry, let's not forget him. He's a great guy who was unable to be here this weekend. But I would just say that these functions are fascinating in the way that they allow us to revisit that period and to be able to listen to the questions that people bring to us at the Frightmare Weekend like this, and to ask us to kind of walk down memory lane and experience things we haven't is really precious, and makes me realize, how powerful that experience was and how proud I am of the movie.
That's great. Well, let's get some more of those questions going. Who else has the next one? There we go.
After Kenny and Company and Phantasm, were you like the coolest kid in school?
He's asking, after Phantasm, were you the coolest kid in school?
I was the coolest kid in school before that.
Really, I only started to get kind of noticed in like junior high school because the ads for Phantasm were on TV. So then, I got a little bit, hassled less. But junior high school sucks. That's all there is to it. I don't think there's any way to get around that. So, and I had a regular kind of acting career anyway during that time. So I was, auditioning and working on television all the time anyway. So people in my school knew, what my deal was. And I was living in Los Angeles, and I wasn't the only professional actor at my school. So they're, not that unusual. So that's it. Yes, I'm very cool.
That's great. And Angus said yesterday that you have a really exciting next film coming out that we should all pay attention to, in particular the two young leads. So can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, that's something I haven't mentioned the entire weekend, is that my new film is entitled John Dies at the End. Actually, thank you, based on a best-selling novel by David Wong, which is not his real name. It's a funny story. The guy's real name is Jason, but it's funny because the book is as told to David Wong, and David Wong is the star of the book. But anyway, I wanted to mention that the young actor that we cast to play David is a Dallas native, and he fresh out of acting school, named Chase Williamson, and the guy is just so wonderful, and I'm sure that for many years to come you guys will be seeing him at conventions, because he battles a lot of interesting demons from other dimensions, and so I think he's firmly ensconced in the genre now with the rest of us. But the movie is really cool. It's about perception and the street drug called the soy sauce that has sort of extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional powers, and people travel to different worlds. Some super cool other actors in the movie. I got a chance to work with one of the guys I just geeked out over was Clancy Brown, because I'm a gigantic Starship Troopers fan, and Sergeant Zim was one of my favorites, and he is this just larger-than-life magnetic personality, and I'm sure everyone must know by how well he plays these genre roles, as Clancy is really maybe a bigger genre geek than I am, and he was so excited to work with me, because he knows the Phantasm movies. So I figured, here's a special cat, but got some other wonderful talent in the movie. Paul Giamatti's got a great role, and then also, and he's a terrific actor. And I'd also like to mention that Doug Jones from Pan's Labyrinth, and he's Abe Sapien in Hellboy. he has a completely non-rubber performance. There's no prosthetics on him, and this guy is a magnificent actor and really underutilized, and he's going to surprise some people in the movie. So keep an eye out early next year. Hope you all look for it.
All right. And one of the common grounds that we all have here is we love horror films, and I think some people would probably love to know what some of each of your favorites are.
No, please, you can. Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it all starts from the beginning. You know, when I was a young lad, I was heavily influenced by a couple of major eras. I mean, obviously, the Universal monsters is where I got started. Frankenstein was my guy. I loved Frankenstein. You know, the Wolfman and the Dracula and all that stuff was just great. As I was a kid, those were the guys that terrified me. But then I also came up in an era where on television they were playing a lot of movies that were like reruns from the 50s, and these were, you know, that had more monster and sci-fi connotations. And so you can already sort of see the parallels of probably how I got to Phantasm, in which I had my classic monster in Angus, and yet at the same time I was obsessed with, you know, extraterrestrial sci-fi explanations for the horror. And so that came out of movies like Invaders from Mars, and then of course Godzilla was a big influence on me. You know, currently, you know, there are a lot of great movies coming out. I recently saw The Human Centipede. I love the movie. You know, previously, a few years ago, the great chance to meet the lovely actress from Audition, you know, the Takashi Miike, and the Japanese, or as they called it, the J-horror, was a great era. But, you know, I think horror is eternal and it's ever changing, and you know, I'm a fan, and I'm looking for what the next thing's going to be, and hopefully next week I'm going to see it.
When I was a kid, I had made the huge mistake of disobeying my mother, and I went and somehow got in to see The Exorcist, and I couldn't leave the theater when the movie was over because I was frozen, petrified, completely freaked out in my seat. I have never been able to see the movie again. Not on TV, not anywhere. I don't plan to ever try to see the movie again. I was totally freaked out by that movie, and I just completely believed it, all of it. Hook, line, and sinker. So I really didn't ever want to see any scary movies after that. And I have been afraid of horror movies ever since then. Now, with that in mind, I think The Shining is probably my favorite scary movie. So Kubrick is my favorite filmmaker, next to Don Coscarelli, of course. And The Shining for me is, I think, the great balance of kind of all that stuff, all in one perfect movie. So that's my story.
All right, well, let's get a few more questions in from the audience here. That's not a hand, that's hair. Okay, right over here, sir.
You mentioned that The Exorcist was your scariest movie. I've seen a lot of horror movies, slasher movies, all of this, and they're entertaining, they're gory. But when I saw Phantasm, I was an adult at the time, and that was the scariest movie I've seen. That was just, those balls flying through the air just really got me.
And for those of you in the back, he was saying that Phantasm was one of the scariest movies that he's ever seen. You heard that a lot?
Once or twice, but you know, it's funny as the time has gone by, though, and you know, obviously good friends with Angus, and of course having made the movie and watching it over and over again, it's hard for me to see that. So I really have to see it through other people's eyes, and I use you as my guide to tell me which parts of it worked and which didn't, because you know, I have to be truthful. You know, there are scenes in the movie that God, I shouldn't go on record here, but you know, maybe didn't play exactly as the way as intended. You know, there's that terrific acting sequence, and people may not get it, when Mike and his brother Jody are battling that demon bug in the house, and they're working their way down the stairs. And as an aside, obviously there's nothing inside that jacket that they're holding, and they're completely acting it all the way down. And I thought that this would be kind of creepy, but people seem to take a little more humorous attitude towards it. So just to let you know that every scene didn't come out the way we had intended it. But I will tell you though that there was a reality to the acting that Mike as a young man brought to the thing. There are moments where he's creeping down the hallway. He knows the tall man's in the house, and you see the way his hands come out and kind of work their way along this narrow hallway. It's almost like acting-wise, he condensed the hallway. And then you've got this ability, this gift, this dark gift that Angus brings to it, and where he summoned that from, who really knows? But he's able to channel it onto film, and we're so just fortunate to have that.
Well, and we were fortunate yesterday to have him give us a good boy with the face and everything. So he certainly has it. Right back there.
Yeah, who came up with the song that Jody and Reggie were singing?
Who came up with the song that Jody and Reggie were singing?
Well, there is a little dispute about that, isn't there?
There is no dispute.
No, there's no dispute. Bill Thornberry wrote that song and had been playing it for years and years, and he played it for me, and I loved it. And I don't know, being a young filmmaker at the time, the idea of just stopping a movie cold and just going into a duet between two guys out on the porch, like who would ever do that, But we shot it, and we would watch it, and the song is just great, and I still love it, and I'm so happy it's still in there. Now, there's a second part of the song after the lyrics are finished, where, it goes into this like 12-bar riff thing that Reggie had some influence in, and, the two of them go round and round as to who came up with that. I don't know, but it's a Bill Thornberry composition. It's a great song. I will say also, though, there was a Reggie Bannister song that went on the cutting room floor that we actually filmed, but we couldn't stop the film for 2 songs, so we kept it at 1.
All right, great. And got a few more questions from the audience. Who's got the next one? Way in the back, sir. Did you always have Angus Scrimm in mind for the tall man?
Well, the thing is as it evolved, I had made this decision that I wanted to make a horror movie. And actually, Reggie had come to me, and he said, Don, you got to read this book. We could make this into a movie. And it was a book by Ray Bradbury called Something Wicked This Way Comes, about these 2 boys. And we just finished up Kenny and Company, and he said, let's get Michael and Dan, who starred in Kenny and Company, and they can play the 2 boys, and we'll make this thing. And so we thought about it. It would be great. And it turned out that that week, Ray Bradbury had licensed the rights to Disney, and it was just gone and not a possibility. And so, I thought, well, maybe I could come up with a story that had some similar aspects to it. And I'd always wanted to make something in a funeral home, but as you can probably tell by watching my early movies, I like to use actors that I worked with before and people I feel comfortable with and who know that can come ready and do what's necessary. And so, as I was creating this new epic to take place in the world of undertaking, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, well, let's get Michael. He could play the kid, and I don't know who's going to play the older brother, but we'll find somebody for that. And then, well, we'll need this evil undertaker. And then I was going, yeah, Reggie Bannister would be perfect for that. And for about a day or 2, I was walking around thinking about Reggie playing this undertaker, and then I thought, what are you thinking, And so then I went through the list of my little troupe of actors, and I thought, yeah, Angus, he was going to be my pirate. Let's put him in the horror movie here. So that's how that happened. It's a true story, unfortunately.
Do we have any fans of the Beastmaster here? Yeah. Not you? Do you have a lot of people come up and ask you about that film as well? Because I know a lot of people it's very close to their heart.
Yeah, we revisited it a few times this weekend, and it was a lot of fun stuff I hadn't thought about for a while. And yeah, it was a interesting experience. It was the one movie that I made that I had no creative control over. So don't blame me for any of the weird stuff in it. But the problem with that is it's like a bastard stepchild, because there's like some cool stuff that was original inspiration and other stuff that I'm not as keen on. And so I made the movie and we put it out. I thought, oh, I can get behind this and just move on. And then there's this thing called cable television, and they started playing it over and over and over and over and over again. And I think every child under 15 saw the movie probably a dozen times, and for better or worse, they've all been influenced by it. But it was a movie that had the original inspiration was to try to create to cross a samurai movie with a Disney film, and see if that would be possible to do a mashup of that, and that was the intention, and then what we got is what we got.
All right, who's got the next question here? Actually, got one? Oh, there, yeah.
I just want to know, it seems like they're remaking all the old horror movies. How would you feel if they remade Phantasm?
How would you feel if they remade Phantasm?
Well, the idea of a remake by some visionary director taking the franchise and really making an artful work of it would be fantastic to sit back and watch that. But it's not really the way it works in Hollywood, because what they do is they wipe the slate clean, and they recast with all new actors, and then they change the story, and certainly they're not going to end it with the kid getting snatched through the mirror and game over, tall man wins, you lose. They're going to paste a happy ending on it or whatever, and populate it with pretty young actors. So that's not as interesting as the first is door one. So I think that obviously there's some pressure to that kind of thing happening. I've resisted it to date, and hopefully we won't have to put another.
Yes,
Oh,
Don't ever let it get remade.
I'll do my best.
Well, I know people bring a lot of stuff for you guys to get signed here. What's been some of the most interesting things that the people have asked you to get signed, or the strangest thing?
Well, first thing is breasts. That's always entertaining. I think the oddest thing that I signed was a tattoo of, it didn't happen this weekend, but a tattoo of my face on a dude's calf. So this was quite a few years ago in Manhattan, and we were doing something, it was just before Oblivion came out, I think, and this guy came up, and very nice guy, and he had a gigantic tattoo of my face on his huge calf. He was a big guy, so he had a big calf. And it was like, it's kind of weird.
Well, I have no breasts and no tattoos, so I don't have anything to talk about there. Mainly the most extraordinary thing I've been, and it's funny to watch how time is changing, because people keep bringing this UK sphere set where they took the 4 discs and they put it into the plastic sphere that sets on your television, and pretty cool. But as I'm signing this thing and we're talking about why there will never be one in the United States, I'm realizing that the DVD is just going the way of the dinosaur, and times are changing while we're still celebrating horror. So I don't know in the future if we won't be able to sign digital copies of things. So anyway, nothing that out there.
Okay, right here in the front, sure.
Speaking of the spheres, where did that idea come from? Did it just pop into your head at some point, or was there an inspiration for the spheres themselves in the movies?
Where did the idea for the spheres come from, and what was the inspiration?
Truthfully, it's one of the few, I think it may be the only idea that I've ever taken from one of my own dreams. As a young man, I had a dream of spheres flying down corridors and pursuing me. We didn't really, when it got the time to make it into a film though, then we brought in some associates who then, in terms of building the prosthetics and the devices to do that, then it started to get a little crazier, because there was nothing in the dream about drills and nothing about pumping blood or brain matter out, so that was sort of added on later. But yeah, that's where it came from, true story.
We have time for 2 more questions before they're going to bring the next panel in here. So if you've got a really good burning question, now is the time to do it. Even if it's not burning, that's okay. There we go, right in the back, sir. What's that? Dominion? Minion?
The minion.
What is your favorite minion?
Well, dwarves, of course. I say dwarf creatures. That's not politically correct. Dwarves. We were so out to lunch back then. But no, I guess that was probably an influence that came out of, you know, that great Nicholas Roeg film, Don't Look Now. And they had the little guy in the red, you know, kind of influenced me. And Tall Man needed some guys, and between that and the Sphere, those were the creatures that came up. Do you have a favorite minion from the movie?
A favorite minion from Phantasm? Or a favorite minion? Any minion? I don't know if it's a minion or not, but I remember being pretty freaked out watching Karen Black in an ABC movie on TV. And at the end, she opens the oven and it's there with his little eyes. And then at the end, it's in her or something like that. And she's like there, and, you know, she's got the knife and she's kind of digging it in. You know, do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? Thank you. It was that. And I was fairly. I never forgot that. Is that a minion? That little guy in there? He's somebody's minion.
All right, that's great. Let's wrap this up with one question. Sir, with the Texas.
When you filmed Phantasm 1, did you plan on using the footage that you used in Part 4 later in another film?
When you filmed Phantasm 1, did you plan using the footage in Part 4? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I had this grand master plan for 4 films that would span 30 years. No, truthfully, the original movie was a one-off, you know, because, like I said before, you know, Tall Man wins, Mike loses, game over is the way I'd seen it. But we had shot so much material on the first film that, and it was, you know, I'm a bit of a pack rat, and we had edited it all out, and I just, you know, thought, well, that's it, never use it, whatever. But thank God for these labs that keep material. So the stuff had been chopped out, and it went into this MGM lab that we were using at the time. And probably a good 10 years after that was all over, I got a phone call, you know, well, we're closing down the MGM labs, and we found these cans. Do you want them? And it, you know, went right over, picked it all up, and it was all this outtake negative. And so I just put it away, thinking that, well, it's about a good hour of Phantasm. Someday, some way, in some iteration, we could maybe use it. And then, you know, the idea came with Phantasm 4 because, you know, the budget was quite low. Well, maybe we could introduce some of that footage and cut the cost down. So that's how it happened.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. It's been an honor to have you guys here. Everyone in this room are big fans of the films, and it's been great to have you guys here. So let's give a big Texas round of applause for these guys. Coscarelli and Michael Baldwin, everybody. Thank you.